What if you died only to be given a choice by a cosmic god? Become its puppet or have your soul completely devoured? Well, this man does the unthinkable. He refuses both, tricking the entity into a pact that binds its infinite power to his will, turning him into the Void's one and only messiah.
A man opened his eyes and realized, to his shock, that he was floating in space. Stars surrounded him, shining brightly and radiating with shifting, colorful hues. It was beautiful, but unnatural. In that moment, he knew one thing for certain: he had died. Yet, even with that realization, he couldn't feel anything. There was no pain, no fear, no sorrow. His emotions were absent, hollowed out from within. That emptiness terrified him even more than death itself. He was stunned by the sensation, or lack thereof, and unable to fully comprehend it. His mind reeled, desperately trying to make sense of the experience. He questioned whether he was dreaming. As he tried to remember anything about his past, everything inside his mind felt distorted. His memories were shrouded in a dense fog, slippery and out of reach. But suddenly, a vague recollection surfaced, fragments of a memory, a monster and a woman. The images were incomplete, but something about them stirred his soul. He asked himself who they were, who was that monstrous entity, and who was the woman. He looked around once more, dazed, and asked aloud what this place even was. The emptiness seemed infinite, stretching beyond comprehension. Was this the afterlife, he wondered? As he turned his head slowly, uncertainly, he called out, asking if anyone was there. That's when it happened. A deep, resonant voice thundered into the void, calling out a single word: human. Startled, he turned to the direction of the voice. A figure emerged, cloaked in layers of flowing, tattered cloth that looked as if it were woven from the void itself. The being stood immense and still, exuding a presence far beyond the understanding of mortals. It resembled an outer being, something not of this universe, a creature beyond time and space. The voice, heavy and vast, spoke again. It told the man that he possessed something they desired. The man, still drifting helplessly in midair, turned toward the towering figure, shocked by what he was witnessing. He demanded to know who the figure was and asked where exactly he had ended up. The being responded in a voice that shook the stars themselves. It told him that it was the incarnation of the void, and that this place, this endless starlit nothingness, was the void itself, the end of all astral realms. The incarnation went on to explain that the man had arrived there because the pieces of his soul had been scattered across the astral rifts. As the man struggled to grasp those words, he caught a sight of a blue flare glowing behind him. The incarnation of the void continued, stating that, fortunately, enough of his soul had remained for them to recreate him. As if on cue, a blue flare of light appeared in the air, floating gently in the void. The man stared at it with wide eyes, gradually understanding what it meant. They had pieced his soul back together. He thanked the being, though he wasn't sure why. He still didn't feel anything. The blue flare drifted downward and rested upon his palm. Despite the overwhelming nature of the moment, he found himself unable to process his emotions. He asked himself how he was even supposed to feel, except he couldn't. In truth, he didn't feel anything at all. The incarnation of the void told him that his gratitude was not required. They only desired one thing: the seal in his possession. The man furrowed his brow and asked what seal they were referring to, insisting that he didn't know anything about a seal. The incarnation explained that there was a seal hidden deep within his soul, one that had fused with it during the process of his death. The man was thrown into further confusion, unable to make sense of anything he was being told. Nothing felt real. He couldn't even trust his own mind. The being then instructed him to reach within his soul. It told him that they had cast a spell on it, one that would allow him to access something called the astral script. It said that the script would tell him everything he needed to know. The man muttered the words back to himself in disbelief, wondering aloud, "Reach inside your soul," the incarnation said. But he quickly realized that he had no idea how to do something like that. Even so, he decided to try. He took in a slow, deep breath and focused. He didn't want to anger the Cthulhu doom god any further. As he concentrated, the blue flare resting in his palm began to glow with a radiant intensity. He wondered quietly what that light even was. A moment later, a glowing window appeared before him, suspended in the air. Generating astral script, complete. Another window followed immediately after. Welcome to the astral system. Name, Noah Brown. Age, dead.
Race, human. Items, unknown. It revealed the truth. The man's name was Noah Brown. He was stunned. Seeing the text made it real, unbelievably real. He couldn't believe that it had actually worked. He turned back to face the incarnation of the void and asked about the message. He said the window claimed that the seal was fused with his soul, and he wanted to know what it actually was and how it had ended up inside him in the first place. The incarnation responded, calling it unpleasant, highly unpleasant, in fact. It added that separating the seal from Noah's soul would be a near impossible task. Noah processed that statement with a grim expression. That meant whatever was happening was far worse than he had thought. Then the incarnation offered him an alternative. It said that perhaps there was still one solution left. It told Noah to become their puppet. If he accepted, it said, he would be granted powers beyond imagination, untold abilities under his command. He would be reborn as the vessel of the void, the channel through which their hunger would grow again. In return, he would be given a new life. Noah narrowed his eyes and asked what would happen if he refused the offer. The incarnation answered coldly. If he chose to reject them, they would take his soul and consume it, to harvest whatever they could from the seal within. That brought a bitter smile to his face. So he thought he didn't really have a choice at all. He asked sarcastically if he was supposed to sign a contract before agreeing. He even joked about whether he needed to get a lawyer first. The incarnation replied that the pact of souls could not be governed by mortals. It said such a pact was held only by the strength of the human spirit. Then Noah asked if that was the case, wouldn't a godlike creature's spirit naturally be stronger than his? He remarked that it didn't seem very fair and questioned how he was supposed to trust the void, not to hurt him after the pact was made. The incarnation told him flatly that he couldn't. Then another glowing window appeared in front of Noah. The incarnation of void wants to make a pact with you. Would you like to accept? With each passing second, Noah felt himself forgetting more and more. Memories of his life were vanishing. He began to forget what it felt like to have a body, to feel real emotions, to be alive. He stared at the window. Slowly, his hand reached toward it. He wondered what price he would pay. But then he stopped. His hand froze midair. He clenched his fist tightly. No, he thought. Soul pacts with swirling void entities never turn out well. He refused. Then Noah asked the incarnation why it was even asking him for permission. He said, "Aren't you a god?" He demanded to know what was stopping the entity from just taking the seal directly. The incarnation of void responded cryptically, calling him a perplexing soul. Suddenly, the cloth of the incarnation's robe began to stretch outward. It twisted and curled until it wrapped itself around Noah. He was shocked and confused, unable to resist as the fabric restrained him. The incarnation told Noah that his choice was not acceptable. A bright flash ignited in its hand. The cloth held him tightly, pulling him face to face with the ancient being. The incarnation then told Noah that if he could not be their puppet, then he would become their Messiah instead. Upon Noah's death, they would harvest the seal from his soul. Another window appeared. A new pact has been made. Serve as the Messiah of the incarnation of void. Would you like to accept? Noah cursed the entity and shouted that he refused to bend to their will. But the window remained, glowing silently. The cloth wrapped around his face. His frustration grew. His eyes narrowed in anger. The incarnation declared that Noah's soul was breaking under their strength and warned that he did not have much time left. It asked him one final time, would he still refuse? It promised him that if he accepted, he would become a god among mortals. He would be worshipped by them. The cloth continued to constrict Noah's body. But Noah shouted back in defiance, yelling that he refused to bow to a monster. The incarnation then asked him what could possibly convince him to work with them. Suddenly, the cloth receded. The grip loosened. Noah fell to his knees, stunned and gasping. He asked aloud why the being had let him go. Then he asked the incarnation to consider a new deal. He reminded it that the pact was governed by spirit. He said, "Let my spirit control the pact, and in return, I won't rise against you." The incarnation asked what benefit that would bring them, wondering aloud why they shouldn't simply erase him then and there. Noah chuckled softly and answered,
that they hadn't done so already, for the same reason they were still listening to him now. The incarnation let out a loud, eerie laugh and admitted that a mortal had bested them. It said, "Very well." Another window appeared. "You have made a pact with the incarnation of Void, Pact of the Voidborn." He had done what none had before, formed a pact with the Void itself, binding it to his spirit. Would this act lead to a foolish demise or the rise of a new ascendant through the astral realms? No one knew. The incarnation of Void is now bound to your soul. Another notification followed immediately, initiating transformation. Suddenly, a howl of power erupted. It surged into Noah's body. Still kneeling, he held his head in agony. The Void itself was now tied to his spirit. Energy covered him. His eyes turned a glowing, sinister purple. Dark power dripping from every trace of his form. Transformation complete. Unknown has awakened, initiating rebirth.
The incarnation of Void chuckled softly. It said it wanted to see how Noah would use their power. Then, with a sudden jolt, Noah was yanked out of the Void. Suddenly, everything shifted. A splash of blinding light tore through the Void, and Noah felt himself being pulled downward, drawn from the cosmic emptiness as if gravity had returned all at once. Another window appeared in front of him. Summoning call heeded. "You have arrived on Erendir." Then came darkness again, but not the peaceful kind. He felt his body hit the ground hard. Heat radiated around him, the air thick with an acrid, sulfurous stench. A reddish glow pulsed through the area, bathing it in an ominous light. Around him stood several figures dressed in black cloaks, their heads bowed low. They surrounded him in a perfect circle, as if in worship. At the center of the room, just ahead of him, stood one figure apart from the others, a robed master who clearly led them. As Noah lay on the ground in the midst of the ceremony, the people began to chant in an eerie unison. "O great being of the abyss, hail!" Their voices echoed with reverence and dread. Noah stirred. His breathing was shallow. Slowly he sat up, clutching his head, trying to understand what was happening. His thoughts were fragmented, his memories unclear. He asked himself aloud where the hell he was. One of the cloaked cultists standing nearby took a sharp step back. The man was visibly frightened. His eyes widened in disbelief. He whispered to the others, shocked by what he had just witnessed. He can talk?" Gasps spread through the gathered crowd. Murmurs arose among the cloaked figures. They began to speak among themselves, their words laced with awe and fear. They questioned if the creature before them, Noah, was truly what they had summoned. Some whispered that it must be a creature of the abyss. Others speculated that perhaps this was some kind of ancient elemental, a test sent by the Void itself to judge their faith. Then, heavy footsteps rang across the chamber floor. A bald man stepped forward from among them. Unlike the others, he wore no hood. On one of his shoulders, a metal demonic faceplate was mounted like armor, etched with jagged runes that pulsed faintly. The crowd parted in silence as he approached Noah. He addressed the summoned being with a tone that was reverent and fearful. He told Noah that they were humbled by his presence, that they had waited long for this moment. Then, without hesitation, he threw a girl to the floor before Noah. It was a young woman. She landed hard on the stone floor, groaning softly. Her hands were shackled with thick iron restraints. A cloth had been tightly tied around her mouth, gagging her. The bald man took a step closer and lowered his head in offering. He addressed Noah again and requested, almost pleaded for the great being to accept the woman's life as an offering. Noah stared at her. He didn't move. He didn't speak. His thoughts were a blur. His body was still overwhelmed by the transformation. His mind, though stronger than before, still reeled from everything that had happened. The pact, the void, the rebirth, and now this. Ritual. He couldn't process any of it.
The bald man stepped forward, his breathing heavy with purpose. With a solemn expression, he unsheathed his sword, turned to the entity that stood before them, and offered himself. He told the summoned being that he wished for his life to be taken as a sacrifice. Noah remained motionless, confused and stunned. He couldn't make sense of anything that was happening around him. He didn't know where he was, who these robed men were, or why they seemed to be treating him like some divine being. Nothing made sense. Then, without warning, a screen suddenly materialized in front of his eyes. The message displayed on it read, "Quest generated. Quest, run, run, run. You are in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by unfriendly faces. It is a good time to start running. Be quick. Reward, map system unlock." Noah slowly stood up. Thoughts whirled through his head, none of them offering answers. He knew he had to get out of here somehow. He observed the robed men, carefully studying their behavior. A realization struck him. They didn't see him as a threat or a victim. No, they feared him, respected him, worshipped him. They didn't see a person, they saw an ancient force. He pointed toward them, his voice tinged with tension and quiet fury, demanding to know where he was. He told them he had just been drifting in the endless void, and now he found himself in this strange realm. He asked them to explain what this place was. One of the robed cultists stepped forward and responded nervously, lowering his head with trembling reverence. He explained that they were in the material realm, and that they had summoned Noah here as a great spirit. The cultists claimed they wished to form a pact with him in exchange for the life of an awakener. Noah's eyes darkened as rage took hold. He sharply reminded them that they had disturbed his sleep in the void, asking if they had any right to do such a thing. The cultists began panicking and pleaded for forgiveness. One of them clarified that they hadn't forced him here, he had arrived willingly. The material realm hadn't trapped him, it had merely received him. Noah ran his hand through his hair and slumped down again, burying his face in his palms. None of this made sense. He needed answers. He needed help. He thought of the screen again, and right on cue, the interface responded. Perks? Identify. He selected the option. A system message popped up. Identify. The universal skill granted to nearly all awakened beings. Although Noah has not awakened, somehow he has accessed this skill. The perk allows you to identify things. Peeking through his fingers, he looked at one of the men standing nearby. A label hovered over the cultist. Abyssal Cultist. He turned his gaze to the bald man. Abyssal Executioner. And then he looked to the girl lying in chains, her body limp, eyes nearly closed, and wrists glowing with glyphs. Flame Warden. She appeared dazed. Her will seemed broken. He could tell she wasn't part of this ritual willingly. Noah considered freeing her. Perhaps, he thought, helping her could lead to his own escape. He smirked slightly as another idea struck him. He called forth the screen again. Inventory. There was only one item inside, a single roll of paper. Reaching into the screen, he pulled it out. The cultists reacted instantly, gasping in awe. To them, it looked like he had used some divine spell, something only higher beings could conjure. He unrolled the scroll and saw unfamiliar symbols, but before he could feel discouraged, the system automatically translated the message for him. Welcome to Arendir. This letter is to inform Noah that he currently possesses the Diamond Premium Package provided by the Incarnation of the Void. His stay in Arendir will be terminated under the following conditions. If he breaks the pact, if his soul is corrupted or destroyed, if the unknown is lost, if Q's is lost. For complaints, please contact your provider. To upgrade your package, reach out to the astral space. Hope you have a wonderful stay. Noah exhaled sharply. The picture was becoming clearer. He was no mere player in this realm. He was a loaded gun in the wrong hands. He turned toward the cultists and declared that he would fulfill their request, but the girl would live. She belonged to him now. The cultists began whispering anxiously. One of them explained, cautiously, that no pact had ever been completed without a blood sacrifice. The ritual demanded it.
Noah slowly approached the girl at the altar, knelt beside her, and whispered quietly, so only she could hear. He admitted he didn't know what was happening, but he had a plan. He asked her to play along, to pretend he had possessed her body. He told her he would lift and drop her, and when he did, she needed to get up and run. Then he stood tall and announced to the cultist that the girl was now his vessel, bound to his will. Suddenly, a thunderous voice bellowed across the room, shaking the chamber with its sheer force. The booming roar demanded to know what the cultists were doing. Noah looked up. The cultists froze. A robed figure pointed at Noah in panic and accused him of enslaving the girl. Then a towering man looked directly at Noah and snarled in rage, calling the cultists fools for not recognizing that the being they had summoned was human. He barked a command. They were to capture Noah immediately. A screen flashed in front of Noah's eyes. Quest failed. Run. New quest generated. Kill or be killed. Stealth is no longer an option. Difficulty, medium. Reward, experience points. Without hesitation, Noah bolted forward and tackled the bald executioner. They hit the ground with a hard thud. The executioner's sword slipped from his hand and skidded across the floor. A ring of keys followed. The cultists gasped, horrified. Noah climbed on top of the executioner and began slamming his fists into his face over and over. Blood gushed from the executioner's nose and splattered onto the floor. When his head finally fell to the side, unconscious, Noah dove for the keys and flung them toward the girl. He shouted at her, telling her to wake up and use them to free herself. Before she could act, another executioner rushed at Noah, his blade aimed for the kill. Noah spun around, backing up. He was unarmed and unprotected. And then it happened. A dark, cloth-like force, the same one that had surrounded him during his arrival, began to emerge from the air. It unfurled and started wrapping around his body. A shadowy aura formed at his feet. The transformation was beginning, but the executioner didn't pause. His sword plunged deep into Noah's chest. Noah screamed in pain as the blade tore through his body. HP 23%. The blade withdrew and a fountain of blood erupted from the wound. Noah collapsed to the ground, coughing violently, blood pooling around him. The executioner raised his weapon again to finish the job. And then a searing flame shot across the room and struck him in the chest. He screamed and was hurled backward, engulfed in fire. Noah weakly turned his head. The girl, Aurelia, stood there, her eyes blazing, her chains broken. Her fists were bloodied from the force she had used to free herself. Another cultist charged at her. She spun in a dance of flame, summoning fire from her hands and casting it in a wide arc. The room lit up with blazing heat. The chief of the abyss watched with fury. He growled that he would handle her personally. Meanwhile, Noah remained on the ground, his body failing. Another cultist ran towards him, blade in hand. HP 8%. Summoning the last of his strength, Noah reached for the sword beside him, pulled himself up and drove it straight through the cultist's chest. Blood sprayed, the cultist fell. Level 1, unmocked out of 100. Infinite potential path unsealed. Abyssal cultist defeated. Quest complete. Secret objective complete. Free Aurelia Fruster. Experience obtained. Noah has no path. Experience points unclaimed. Do you wish to awaken a path?
Noah had fallen to his knees, barely clinging to life, with only 6% of his HP remaining. Blood continued to pour from the gash in his chest, and he could no longer keep his eyes open. His body had long since hit its limit. With a weak breath, he collapsed onto the floor. Just before blacking out, he mumbled bitterly to himself that it was ridiculous. He was dying the instant he arrived. What a joke, he thought. At that moment, a system window appeared before him, asking if he wished to awaken a path. Noah had no other option left and agreed. Immediately after, he found himself in the familiar void again. A message popped up. Activation process initiated. Shortly after that, another window followed. Transporting to astral space.
Noah opened his eyes again, but this time his vision was blurry. As he blinked to clear it, he realized he was standing in the middle of a vibrant arcade. Neon lights flickered across the room, claw machines blinked invitingly, and faint game music echoed in the background. Noah muttered aloud, confused, wondering where he had landed now. As he looked around, he admitted to himself that he hadn't been in a place like this in years. That's when he noticed someone sitting behind the counter, a man wearing glasses who gave him a small wave and greeted him with a casual, "You're finally here." Still confused, Noah asked who the man was and what this place was supposed to be. The man replied with a smirk and said he'd explain everything if Noah would just calm down. Noah, now irritated, demanded to know if he was another void god trying to mess with him. The man dismissed the accusation and insisted he wasn't like that. He told Noah his name was Dylan, without a last name, because Noah's subconscious hadn't bothered to give him one. Noah muttered skeptically that it was apparently his fault the guy didn't have a surname. Dylan, unfazed, went on to explain that he was from the void and represented it in Noah's pact. He added that he only existed inside Noah's astral space because of that contract, not by choice. As Noah explored, he reached one of the arcade machines and placed his hand on the joystick. He asked if this was his astral script. Just then, the screen lit up with a message. "Congratulations! The Diamond Premium Package has activated a special event for your awakening. You may now select up to 3 paths at once." Noah looked surprised. He turned to Dylan and asked what exactly an astral script was. Dylan rolled his eyes, saying that this was why he hated mortals. They never knew anything. Then he explained that the astral script was essentially part of Noah's soul, a manifestation of his magical essence. He told Noah this arcade was the form his astral script had chosen to take, probably because it was something familiar to him. Noah admitted he used to visit arcades as a kid. Then, while still standing at the machine, he asked what he was supposed to do now. Dylan advised him to press the button. Noah did so. The screen now displayed, "Welcome to the Astral Fighter, scanning character profile, integrating past life experiences." After that, a path selection menu appeared, listing classes like Warrior, Mage, and Thug. Dylan told him he could select 3 paths. Noah asked what he needed to know before making a choice. Dylan explained that there were 4 primary attributes: power, constitution, agility, and mystic. He said that stronger paths would increase stats more, but also limit future choices. Noah hovered over the warrior option and selected it. A system window popped up. Path selected. Warrior. Gift. Upon winning a battle, gain a permanent bonus gift. Reward. +1 attribute point per level. Requirement. Win a fight. Noah noted this seemed pretty standard. He browsed other paths: martial artist, pugilist, brute, thug, but they all felt similar. Dylan told him that there were other options on the next machine. Noah approached another cabinet, and Dylan said he would probably need this one. Noah pressed start and realized it was focused on healing-based classes. He asked whether choosing a healing path would help him recover from his near-death state. Dylan shook his head and told him that time had been paused for the awakening, and he only had a few minutes to survive once he returned. As Noah scrolled through options, his attention was caught by one path, Exsanguinator. He asked Dylan about that. The system explained. Rare path, Exsanguinator. Draw blood from astral realms and fallen creatures. Heal or harm at will. Requirement, deep understanding of blood. Biological mastery. Reward, +1 constitution, +2 free attributes per level. Dylan commented that it looked good, healing and affliction-based. Noah confirmed the selection. For the third path, Noah continued searching. Dylan pointed to one labeled Void's Herald and remarked that it was powerful. Noah scoffed and said he wasn't about to become a puppet for the Void. That path, marked as legendary, had minimal requirements, just a pact with the Void, and offered +10 attributes per level, although none of them were player assigned. Tempting, but Noah didn't like the lack of control. Then something else caught his eye: Astral Walker, an epic path. The description read, Astral Walker. After floating through the interdimensional void, you have absorbed fragments of the astral realm. Requirement: absorb part of an interdimensional astral rift. Rewards: +1 agility, +2 mystic, +2 free attributes per level. Noah selected it. He then locked on to his third choice, Void Hunter, another epic path. It read, Void Hunter, natural instinct for hunting fused with high void affinity. Rewards: +1 mystic, +2 power, +2 free attributes per level. With that, Noah declared to Dylan that he had made his choices: Exsanguinator, Astral Walker, and Void Hunter. They both exhaled, exhausted after searching so long. Noah pressed the confirmation button. Suddenly, the arcade machine burst into a black and violet glow. The screen turned to static. From it, a shadowy, ethereal substance emerged and wrapped around Noah's body. He tried to move, but he couldn't. Dylan stood to the side and casually remarked that he had forgotten to mention that the first awakening usually hurt like hell. A swirling portal opened behind Noah as the darkness began to pull him in. Noah cursed Dylan, who simply watched with amusement as Noah was dragged through the rift. A system log flashed on screen. Path awakening complete. Exsanguinator, level 3. Astral Walker, level 2. Void Hunter, level 2. New abilities unlocked. Blood Drain. Bunk. Obliterate. Rank increased. F. Attributes updated. Power, 4. Agility, 2. Constitution, 3. Mystic, 6. Back in the real world, Noah's eyes snapped open. His body twitched as blood continued to flow from his chest. Then his first ability activated. A system window blinked to life. Blood Drain, activated. HP permanently regenerating. The blood spilled around him reverse direction, flowing back into his wounds. His chest began healing rapidly. Another window followed. Health regeneration plus 100% for 5 minutes. Noah flipped over onto his back, staring at the ceiling as his blood re-entered his body. Slowly, he began to heal. Meanwhile, not far away, the battle continued. The abyssal chief stood tall, his body swirling with void energy. Aurelia, the girl who had fought to protect Noah, was struck down by a dark tendril. Blood poured from her face, and she fell to her knees, glaring at her attacker. At that moment, another system notification appeared before Noah's eyes. New quest obtained. Cultus Exterminatus. You were summoned as an eldritch monstrosity by Victril Nefar. It only seems fitting to exterminate him like one. Difficulty: hard. Reward: rare grade ability tome. Optional objective: don't die.
Aurelia stood her ground, prepared in a battle stance as she faced the chief's attack. The moment he launched his blow, his fist cloaked in dark energy, she had blocked it with unwavering strength. Her eyes had burned with determination as she raised her own arm, flames erupting from her clenched fist. Without hesitation, she had dashed forward, aiming to strike back. The chief had seemed delighted by her aggression. A wicked grin had stretched across his face as he countered with his own power. Their clash had been ferocious, the impact shaking the ground around them. Aurelia had blocked a second attack just as fiercely as the first, refusing to yield. At that moment, Noah had been lying on the ground. He had lifted his head to glance at the translucent system screen floating above him, displaying quest details. The blood that had stained his body moments before had vanished, drawn back into him as if rewinding time. Then, a new screen had appeared listing his name, race, rank, current stats, paths, and available attribute points. Faced with a decision, Noah had wondered whether to distribute his points evenly or pour everything into a single stat. After a moment of deliberation, he had opted for balance, raising his power, agility, and mystic to 7, and his constitution to 8. The window had confirmed the increase and notified him that his mana had reached maximum. Meanwhile, Aurelia had made another swift move. She had lunged at the chief with her fiery fist, her speed too fast for him to evade. The moment her feet had struck the ground, the very floor had begun to crack. She had ripped up chunks of stone and, without pause, punched them toward him like fiery projectiles. Each blow had been calculated and precise. The chief, startled, had quickly formed a defensive spear.
Writhing void energy and black ropes had wrapped around him, creating a barrier that absorbed her barrage. Still, the pressure had been relentless. While this unfolded, Noah had grabbed a sword near him, thinking it might prove useful. He had stored it into his system inventory, rising to his feet with determination in his eyes. Suddenly, Aurelia had been hurled into a wall by the chief's counterattack. Noah had cried out her name in concern. As he turned, he had seen the chief now levitating, shrouded in a menacing aura, his expression dark and unreadable. Thinking fast, Noah had called out to him, referring to him by name, Victral Nefar. He had tried to explain that everything had been a misunderstanding. He claimed to be an emissary of the incarnation of the void, sent to deliver a divine message. But Victral had not been convinced. His glare had sharpened, and it had become clear he suspected deception. To prove himself, Noah had pulled out the scroll he had received earlier. He had held it up and declared that harming him would be a grave mistake. As Victral's eyes narrowed, Noah unrolled the parchment. With a calm but firm voice, he began to read the message aloud, stating that the void had acknowledged Victral's loyalty and had given him an answer. For a moment, Victral had appeared stunned. The honor of hearing directly from the incarnation of the void had not been lost on him, but the expression of awe quickly turned to suspicion. Muttering that it was all a lie, Victral clenched his fists and gathered his power, launching a sudden, devastating attack toward Noah. Before the attack could land, Noah's Astro Walker path activated its blink ability, enveloping him in radiant light. In a blink of an eye, he had vanished and reappeared several feet behind where he once stood. He realized, breathless, that he had narrowly escaped death. Acting quickly, Noah retrieved the sword from his inventory and, without hesitation, hurled it straight at Victral. The blade pierced the chief's chest cleanly, a spray of blood erupting from the wound. Noah had crouched, preparing for another strike, and shouted for Aurelia to finish it. She had heard him. With renewed vigor, she had launched herself upward, grabbed Victral's arm mid-air, and slammed her blazing fist into his gut. The impact had sent him crashing into the temple wall. As he clung to it, coughing blood, Aurelia pressed the assault. Both her fists blazing, she had pummeled him repeatedly, delivering crushing blow after blow. Then came the finishing move. With a fiery battle cry, she had drawn back her leg, ignited it with roaring flame, and delivered a final kick that launched Victral into the ground below. The stone had cracked beneath the impact. At that exact moment, a window had appeared before Noah. Quest update: Abyssal Cultist Chief defeated, plus XP. Noah stared at disbelief at Aurelia's overwhelming strength. Another window flashed before him. Astro Walker Path, Level 4, Void Hunter Path, Level 4, Exsanguinator Path, Level 6. Aurelia landed beside Victral's body, the sword still embedded in his chest. Another system notification appeared before Noah's eyes. Power increased to 11, Agility increased to 9, Constitution increased to 11, Mystic increased to 13, plus 14 free attribute points awarded. His quest had come to an end. As a reward, he had received a rare item, Tome of Infliction. Exhaling with relief, Noah had let out a quiet laugh and collapsed backward. He had whispered to himself that it was finally over. Aurelia had walked over and stood beside him, arms crossed. She had not shared in his sense of victory. Her expression remained sharp. She had told him bluntly that he had a lot of explaining to do. She asked who he truly was and why he had been summoned through a ritual circle. Noah had responded flippantly, reminding her that he had just saved her life, but she hadn't relaxed. In fact, her expression only grew colder as she activated her power again. She admitted she was thankful, but she had also warned that she'd been betrayed once before and wouldn't let her guard down so easily again. For all she knew, he could be a shape-shifting monster. That accusation had caused Noah to tense, though he said nothing. She stepped closer and asked if he was human. Noah replied sharply that of course he was. Then she asked if he was from this world. Noah gritted his teeth. He hesitated. Should he lie? What if people from this world hunted outsiders? But in the end, he told her the truth. He looked her in the eyes and said calmly, "No, I'm not from this world."
Aurelia had clenched her flaming fist and demanded to know if Noah was with the cultists. Suspicion was etched deep into her features as she confronted him. Noah, already pushing himself to his feet, had immediately denied the accusation. She had then asked if he was aligned with the Iron Fist. Noah, still brushing dust off his clothes, had frowned in confusion and asked who they even were. But Aurelia had refused to let it go so easily, telling him to just answer her questions. He had insisted that he'd never heard of either group. Finally, she had sighed, and the fiery glow around her dissipated as she deactivated her powers. Her expression softened with visible relief. She'd apologized for her outburst and admitted that she appreciated his help, even if he had spent a good portion of the fight simply standing around. Still clearly wary, she had explained that nothing about him made sense. She had told him that she'd already been betrayed once today, by her own adventuring party no less. Her voice carried a layer of frustration, and she apologized again for being on edge. Noah had remarked that it sounded like she'd had a rough day. Aurelia had sighed again and nodded in agreement. As they stood in silence, both of their eyes had been drawn to the sword still impaled in the cult leader's corpse. A gleam had flashed across its surface. Noah had then turned to her and explained that he hadn't rushed in earlier because he'd received an optional quest titled "Don't Die." That statement clearly confused her. She had tilted her head and asked what kind of quest that was. He had told her it was an RPG thing, a term from role-playing games, and mentioned that his astral script looked like one. Aurelia, still standing, had placed one hand on her hip and asked what exactly an RPG was. Noah had only smiled, waved off the question, and introduced himself as Noah. He said he was new to this world and explained that he had died at work before being reborn and sent here. That had caught him off guard. She murmured that resurrections didn't just happen without divine intervention, then suddenly narrowed her eyes and questioned how he knew her name. Noah simply pointed out that her name had shown up in the quest he'd received. He had sighed and told her that none of this made sense to him either. He was just as confused as she was. After a pause, Aurelia had noted that outer-worlders like him were rare. That's why she'd been so suspicious of him, though now she believed he was telling the truth. She had turned and walked a few paces before sitting on the ground and closing her eyes. Noah had asked what she was doing, and she had replied that she was meditating. He looked at her puzzled and asked, "Shouldn't we escape first?" To that she'd replied with a faint smirk that he wouldn't understand because he wasn't from here. She had explained that meditation was how they replenished mana and pointed out that he was low on it too. Noah looked around at himself, trying to understand what she meant by aura. Then, as if triggered by something within him, a surge of energy flared around him, and his aura manifested, raw and untamed. Aurelia had opened one eye and casually explained that all awakened individuals possessed an aura. She had asked whether there were any awakened people in his world. Noah, a little embarrassed, had replied that they only had magic tricks, cheap illusions at best. Aurelia laughed and commented that this must have been his first real taste of magic, especially since he had chosen the exsanguinator path. Noah started sweating nervously, asking if that path was taboo or something forbidden. Still meditating, she assured him that as long as he didn't dabble in necromancy or ritual sacrifices, he would be fine with the Adventurers Guild. Curious, Noah asked what that guild was. She told him they'd talk about it later. For now, they needed to focus on meditating. At that moment, a system window appeared before Noah. He had unlocked the meditation skill. His mana regeneration had increased to 100%, and a new mana bar appeared beside his HP bar. While waiting, he opened his system and reviewed his stats. His power, agility, constitution, and mystic values had increased. Some of his existing abilities had leveled up, and a new one had been unlocked, Void Hunter. When he selected the ability, a new option appeared. Obliteration, power level 1. Channel the energies of the void to annihilate everything that may come in your path. He activated the ability, causing a black orb to form in his palm. It radiated a strange, unstable energy. A warning then appeared, noting that his health was draining. He only smirked and said it was a good thing he had taken the exsanguinator path. Not long after, his mana bar filled to 100%. Aurelia, having finished her meditation, stood up and stretched. She told him it was time to move. They approached the cult chief's corpse. Aurelia began rummaging through the corpse, looking for something. Noah asked what she was searching for, and she explained that she needed to find a storage device, something that was bigger on the inside. If they could take it to the city, they might be able to access whatever was inside. Noah wondered aloud whether he could link his inventory to a physical object like that. She confirmed it was possible, but also mentioned that it was annoying, since those items were typically blood-bound and couldn't be opened without a key or special help. He asked if he could see it, and she tossed it to him. Noah caught the bracelet and instinctively stored it in his inventory. Immediately, a system prompt appeared asking if he wanted to transfer the contents of Victrol Payfar's storage device into his inventory. He selected yes. Items began flooding into his system. Multiple mana stones, several healing potions, a pair of twin daggers, a strange ring, an abyssal cultist robe. Aurelia, still going through the body, turned and asked in frustration if he'd found anything. Noah retrieved a key from his inventory and held it up. She had frozen, then asked, where did he get it? He told her it came from the storage device and listed off a few more items he'd found. Then he tossed her the key. She stared at him in disbelief and asked if he could really just take things out of it. He nodded with a grin and said he really needed a change of clothes. He swapped his shirt for the cultist robe and then examined the eerie ring with a glowing eye. He asked if it was cursed. While dragging the corpse, Aurelia answered that although the ring was disgusting, it wasn't cursed. It simply enhanced mana capacity. As if reacting to him, the eye on the ring opened and stared straight at him. Noah muttered, "That's creepy," but still put it on. The system confirmed. Ring of the Abyssal Eye. Rare item. Boosts mana regeneration. Increases mana capacity. Enhances identification and perception. He then looked at Aurelia, and for the first time could see her level. She was nearly as powerful as the cult chief had been. Retrieving the twin dagger, he gave them a few test swings. Aurelia reignited her flame and stood over the corpse. She asked if it was Noah's first time killing someone. He blinked and admitted that it was. She told him she could tell. She'd seen it in his eyes. Looking at the burning body, he asked why she did this. She replied without hesitation, wealth, renown, and respect. But most of all, she said she wanted to help people. She couldn't just sit by when there was so much evil in the world. The corpse had been reduced to charred ash and bone. Then she asked if he regretted it. He said no, because they were going to kill him. He just acted first. Aurelia smiled faintly. She said that if they hadn't killed the cultists, more innocent people would have died. She admitted that her adventuring team had betrayed her, poisoned her, and handed her over to the cult. Noah then retrieved 2 books from his inventory and asked, "What do you think about me becoming a good adventurer?" Without hesitation, she said that he would become one. Even without tomes and at his current level, he'd done well. He laughed and said that all those years of playing RPGs and lying during job interviews had finally paid off. Finally, he had placed the 2 books on the ground and asked how to activate them. Aurelia told him it required ritual magic and that the tome acted as a conduit. He placed his hand on one of the books, and a radiant blue light erupted from it. Startled, Aurelia asked what was happening. A glowing blue eye appeared on the cover of the book, and it floated into the air. Noah, remaining calm, read the system message in front of him. Unlock a sight-based ability from the tome. Yes, no. Without hesitation, he pressed yes.
Noah was presented with another window. Select a path to use Tome of Sight. In front of him appeared 3 options: Exsanguinator, Astral Walker, and Void Hunter. He only needed to choose one. After examining his choices carefully, Noah selected the Void Hunter path. The moment he made his decision, a message appeared informing him that the Tome of Sight had been consumed. Using it, he unlocked a new ability, Void's Hunter Eye, under the Void Hunter path. A glowing mark appeared on his forehead, signifying the activation of the skill. Simultaneously, the ring of Abyssal on his hand reacted to the change, dark energy swirling around it, as a new message blinked before his eyes. Ring of Abyssal Eye has temporarily increased Void Hunter's Eye to level 3.
Noah remained still for a moment, eyes closed, while golden light circled his forehead. The energy from the ring intertwined with the light, fusing dark and radiant energy. When he opened his eyes again, he gave a small laugh, exhilarated by the surge of power. Everything around him had changed. His vision was clearer, more detailed, and vibrant. He thought it felt like viewing the world in 4K resolution, his personal version of a high-definition isekai experience. Turning around, he saw Aurelia standing silently behind him, observing his reaction. Through his newly awakened eye, he could see the aura that surrounded her. He initially mistook it for mana, but Aurelia corrected him, explaining that it was actually her aura. Looking down at himself, he noticed that he could now see his own aura too. The realization filled him with amazement, and he expressed how incredible it was. When Aurelia asked why he was so fascinated, he simply responded that he loved it. Without wasting time, Noah turned to the second tome in front of him and placed his hand on its surface. Red energy spiraled upward from the book, and another window appeared. Tome of Infliction. Rare item. Unlocks an infliction ability. Do you want to use this item? Noah accepted the prompt, and the tome vanished in a burst of crimson light. The system informed him that he had consumed the tome and unlocked the Bleed ability under his exsanguinator path. A floating book hovered in front of him, while he knelt, watching the red energy whirl around it. Another screen explained the details. Bleed. Basic. Level 1. Blood is what you reap, and blood your enemy will shed. Inflicts the bleed status effect on enemies. Can be applied to weapons. Noah read through it and admitted he found it impressive. Aurelia, looking over, remarked that abilities like this usually only appeared in rare grade or higher tomes. She then told Noah it was time to move forward, but instructed him to consume an F-grade mana stone first, cautioning him not to try anything stronger. Curious, Noah asked what would happen if he did. Stretching her neck, Aurelia explained that consuming a higher-grade stone might give a brief strength boost, but it would also cause mana poisoning. Flexing her arm with pride, she added that eating a stone 2 grades higher might provide a more intense burst of power for a limited time, but the after effects would be devastating. She warned that the mana would eventually start tearing through her body, leading to paralysis and immense suffering. In the worst-case scenario, if the mana surge was too overwhelming, her body would explode on the spot, if she was lucky. Otherwise, it would be a slow and excruciating death. Noah gripped the stone in his hand, listening closely. Aurelia called him to move forward, saying they still had work to do. As they walked, Noah asked if this was really the way out. Aurelia, now bandaging her arm, replied that this place probably had a storage chamber full of magical items. She intended to loot the place thoroughly, especially anything related to the person she had been sent to find. When Noah asked if anyone else might still be alive inside, Aurelia clenched her fist and said if there were any survivors, they'd be kept in a small underground dungeon. She herself had been the last captive there. She advised caution, suggesting they set traps in case any cultists or monsters remained. Noah followed her in silence, absorbing her words. They continued down a dark corridor, lined with multiple doors. Aurelia motioned for Noah to look down the hall while she inspected one of the doors. As she checked the room, she asked Noah if he had the storage device. He handed it to her, and she fastened the bracelet to her arm. After igniting a flame in her palm, she raised her hand, the device activated, and emitted a brilliant glow. They found themselves in front of a wall inscribed with symbols in an unknown language. Noah pressed his hand against it, silently questioning what had driven these people to commit such atrocities. In his thoughts, he reflected that human nature doesn't change much, even in another world. Aurelia overheard his murmurs and replied that people could be twisted by the desire for power, twisted beliefs, or even something as simple as being born into the wrong family. Turning to face him, she added that everyone involved in this cult had been awakened adults who willingly chose this path. While Noah lingered at the wall, Aurelia crouched beside him, inspecting the floor. She discovered 6 small stones arranged in a specific pattern. As she touched them, the area around them shimmered, revealing an illusionary trap. They would need to jump over it to avoid falling in. Noah remained quiet, thinking about those who hadn't chosen this path. He asked Aurelia what had happened to those people. Aurelia looked up and answered that there were rituals used by the priests of Hellion to purge people of abyssal influence. However, she emphasized that these rituals weren't meant to save. They were designed as punishment, often carried out in public as a form of execution. Survivors would never be the same again. The idea horrified him. He asked what would happen if the victim had been a child, someone forced into it. Aurelia, continuing forward, told him that children were executed painlessly. That was the harsh reality of their world. The two of them crossed the illusion trap safely. Then Aurelia pointed to a glitching door up ahead and instructed Noah to stand back. Activating her flame ability, she drew back her fist and punched the door with explosive force. The impact blew the door open. Noah chuckled nervously, while Aurelia gave him a self-assured grin. Inside stood a large table filled with books. Noah looked around and asked what kind of place it was. Aurelia guessed it was the cultist's chief study room. She sifted through several books, but found nothing of value. Noah raised a finger and jokingly said that if he were the head of a cult, he'd probably hide his loot too. Aurelia agreed with his reasoning. Noah approached the bookshelf and pulled out a dusty volume. A message flashed before him. Skillbook. Advanced Abyssal Call. Rare item. A book that contains 3 advanced rituals to summon entities from the endless void. Would you like to consume this item? He shook his head and replied to the system that he would not consume it, at least not yet. He was still looking for the hidden storage room. Dropping the book to the floor, he began pulling out more books. Aurelia, raising an eyebrow, asked what he was doing. He grinned and explained that he'd seen something like this in a movie. After pulling out another book, a hidden lock was revealed behind it. Opening his inventory, he retrieved the key he had taken earlier from the chief and inserted it into the lock. With a twist, the bookshelf slowly shifted aside, revealing a hidden passage. Noah couldn't believe it had worked. As they entered the passage, Aurelia asked how he had found it. Noah answered that secret chambers and stories from his world were usually hidden like this. Aurelia smiled slightly and remarked that his world sounded like a strange one. They moved deeper inside. The air grew heavy, and the floor was streaked with blood. Aurelia lit the way with a small flame, revealing more gore. The walls were covered in crimson stains. They had entered a secret jail composed of tiny chambers. The atmosphere felt disturbing. Noah asked quietly what this place was. A window suddenly appeared in front of him. New hidden quest unlocked. Blood behind the walls. You've wandered off the main path into secrets best left untouched. Will you seek the truth, or listen to the blood's warning?
Noah had gestured into the darkness, explaining to Aurelia that his quest had pointed them to uncover the mystery hidden within this place. He had voiced his unease, noting that this time there was no reward listed, and the difficulty level was labeled unknown. Aurelia, sensing the strangeness of it, had raised an eyebrow and remarked that it sounded ominous. She had then asked him if he knew what it meant. Noah had admitted he didn't. In response, she had suggested that perhaps it would be better if he stayed behind. When he had questioned her, asking why, Aurelia had illuminated the chamber with a glow from her magic and surveyed the surroundings. She had told him that this place could be dangerous for someone like him, pointing out that he had barely awakened and wasn't ready for what might lie ahead. She had crouched down and touched the blood-stained floor, warning him that F-rankers weren't supposed to deal with such things and should be handling low-level monster hunting quests, not getting involved with abyssal cults. Despite her warning, Noah had insisted that they shouldn't stay there. He had proposed they retreat for now and go to a nearby town, returning only when they had backup. Aurelia had refused. She had explained that the team who betrayed her was likely still around, and that others had been with her when she arrived. Her voice had turned grave when she revealed they had all been killed and that she had been the last one left, intended for sacrifice. She had told him that if she didn't find their bodies, they would rise as undead, and that was something she couldn't allow. Hearing that, Noah had nodded and resolved to stay with her. He had told her clearly that he couldn't let her die here. Amused, Aurelia had tilted her head, adopting a slightly teasing tone as she said it was cute he thought he could even dent anything powerful enough to kill her. Noah had frowned, reminding her sharply that he had helped her in a previous battle against Victril and his men. That couldn't be considered nothing. Aurelia had chuckled, saying that had only been one fight. Still, she had conceded that he was adapting to the magic better than she had expected. Noah had replied casually that it was probably because of the hours he had spent playing video games. She had given him a sideways look, muttering that he was weird. As they walked, the path ahead had split. Aurelia had pointed toward the left fork, saying they should take that route. The passageway had been curved and narrow, forcing them to move in single file. Noah had complained aloud, wondering why the path was so tight. Aurelia had explained that it was built that way for defense, to slow enemies down. She had run her fingers along the wall, stating that it was forged using mana and was extremely dense, nearly unbreakable. Eventually, the narrow passage had led them to a massive door. She had gestured toward it and asked him to take a look. Noah had groaned in frustration, recognizing the situation, and sarcastically asked him if she was planning to punch it open again. But this time, Aurelia had approached the door, gripped the lock calmly, and opened it without resistance. What lay beyond had surprised them both. It resembled a study or library filled with scattered books, open scrolls, and stacks of parchment. Aurelia had declared that this must have been Victral's study room. Noah had crouched and tried to understand the papers, but found the writing and symbols incomprehensible. Meanwhile, Aurelia had picked up a thick book from the desk and flipped it open. As she read, her expression darkened. She had explained that the book detailed Victral's experiments, including his attempt to create a chimera using his familiar. The first prototype, according to her, had regeneration but lacked intelligence or future potential. Victral had expressed regret for merging so many bodies. But the second prototype was different. Aurelia noted that this one possessed void affinity and had used a human host who retained intelligence, though the fusion process had left him unstable. Victral needed a stronger base, someone at least E rank. He even put out a request for one, intending to complete his final plan. At that moment, Noah had seen a system window appear before him, informing him that he had completed the quest, Blood Behind the Wall. As expected, there had been no reward. Then a loud crash echoed from behind them. Both of them had instinctively turned toward it. Aurelia shouted for Noah to run. They had turned to flee, but then a mutilated body dropped in front of them with a groan. It had fallen silent quickly after. Both of them looked into the chamber and spotted a grotesque creature inside a cage. It had 3 eyes, and several human bodies were fused grotesquely into its flesh. Aurelia had frozen in horror. The corpses had belonged to the prisoners who had once been with her. The creature turned lazily at first, showing no interest in them. For a brief moment they had both exhaled in relief. But then, one of the corpses embedded in its body moved. A trembling hand pointed toward Noah and murmured a single word, "Ringmaster." The creature's eyes locked onto the ring on Noah's finger. He stared back in horror. The monster shrieked, its roar deafening, and shattered the cage holding it. Without hesitation, Aurelia unleashed her flames in a powerful attack. Noah, stumbling backward and slipping out of her line of sight, seen another system window appear before him. It was a new quest, a familiar's vengeance. The quest warned that he had glimpsed the atrocity behind the curtain, and now the creature hungered for the one who killed his master. It was labeled Very Hard, and the reward was an epic-grade ability tome. Noah quickly dismissed the screen. The monster turned back, only wildly burned, and growled the word, "Master killed." Then it lunged at Noah. He rolled underneath it just in time and shouted that they needed to get out of there. The beast crashed into a wall, muttering again, "Master die." Its grotesque tongue shot out, wrapping around Noah's foot and yanking him into the air. In desperation, Noah tried to activate Astral Walker Blink, but nothing happened. Panic overtook him as he shouted in confusion. Just before the monster could devour him, Aurelia dashed in and severed the tongue with her fire. She shouted to him that his aura was being suppressed. He couldn't blink while it was active. As he hit the ground, he staggered up and looked back. The monster's gaze had trained to Aurelia, noticing her Void Hunter eye and identifying her as the next threat. She focused, analyzing the situation. Its regeneration was extreme, and her fire wasn't enough. She muttered that there had to be another way to kill it. Suddenly, a horrible screech pierced the air. Noah covered his ears as another system window informed him he had resisted the effect of Phantom Shriek. The creature launched a series of attacks at Aurelia. She dodged skillfully, blocking with fire-coated fists and counterattacking. At one point, she landed a heavy punch that threw the monster across the room. Landing near Noah, she asked if he was all right. He nodded and replied that he just had some buzzing in his ears. The monster got up again and started spinning violently, launching debris like projectiles. Both of them dodged. Then, Aurelia jumped into the air once more. Her flames flared around her, burning brighter than before. Noah, watching from below, had seen her surge downward in a blaze of fury, crashing toward the monster like a comet of fire.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads. See you in the next one. Take care.